Hi, in this session we are going to explore together some of the new capabilities we added in ArcGIS Survey123. Specifically, we are going to be talking about the February 2021 update, which is build 3.12. The tone of this presentation is going to be technical. It's assumed that you are already familiar with the high-level story and vision of Survey123. I have selected 7 different topics for this session, which I will explore in depth, hoping that these techniques and these instructions will help you design better smart forms. I want to start with enhancements to lists. Lists help us capture structured data in a very effective manner, and they are a fundamental aspect of good smart form design. This release introduces a few new capabilities that you should be aware of. They will allow you to work with larger lists. You will be able to more easily manage updates to these lists and even improve the display of your lists in mobile devices and the web application. We are also bringing new options for you as an author to eliminate bias from ordered lists by randomizing choices, and even a new type of question called the ranking type of question. Sometimes we need to work with very large lists of choices. In this example, we are loading the USDA plants database into Survey123. It has over 70,000 different species. With the techniques I'm going to describe now, you shouldn't fear these type of situations. Starting with build 3.12, you can now use the select from file type of question. Note that it applies to both select one and select multiples. The idea is that your lists will no longer be defined in the choices XLS form spreadsheet. Instead, your lists will go into a CSV file which you will keep in the media folder. You should use the select from file type of question for very long lists. Think about thousands, even hundreds of thousands of choices. This question type is much faster than the equivalent select one and select multiple. Your CSV files must include at least the name and label columns, although you can add language columns as well if you like. If you are working on iOS, keep in mind that the CSV file name is case sensitive. So when you reference your CSV file in the type column, make sure that you get the casing right. This table will give you an idea of the performance difference that this type of question can make. In this case, we are showing the time it takes to render the list on iOS. Note that no matter how big the list is, the time remains pretty much fixed, as opposed to select one, which is slower as the list grows. Okay, let's look at this a little bit more closely in Survey123 Connect. This is the USDA's website. From here, I downloaded the plants database, which is a pretty exhaustive list of all the plants in the US. Here is the actual CSV file that you can download from their website. You can imagine CSV is a pretty common format for lists. It has a little bit over 70,000 records. So let's load this in to Survey123. Note that I added a column called label and a column called name. The name is the code, and the label is, well, the label that will show in the Survey123 form to end users. This is my survey. In Connect, you can see that I'm using a question of type autocomplete. Now, if I look at the XLS form, you will see that I'm using the select one from file type of question, and I'm referencing the plants.csv file. Now, where is that CSV file? I just put it into the survey directory inside the media folder. Remember that the name of this file and what you write in XLS form is case sensitive. Keeping lists up to date is also a common challenge. Typically, what you do is basically you update the list in XLS form, and then you publish your survey again so the application can notify users that the survey needs to be downloaded. Now, things are going to get much easier though. You can now populate a list from a CSV item in ArcGIS. This means that if you update the CSV item, the Survey123 field app can see the change and download automatically the list. Rather than downloading the entire survey, the app just downloads the list on the user's behalf. And kind of the typical workflow to make this happen is as follows. First, you add your select from file questions and their corresponding CSV files into the media folder. You author your survey in Connect normally and you publish it. Once published, you upload your CSV file from the media folder into ArcGIS as a CSV item. You share the CSV item accordingly, so it matches the sharing of your survey. And then you use the Survey123 Connect link tab to link your survey to the CSV item. And that's it. At that point, the lists will update automatically on the mobile device whenever you change the CSV item in ArcGIS. Let's have a closer look at that. Here I am in Survey123 Connect and I have my select one from file list. I'm going to go into the files and then media folder to get the path. With this, I go into ArcGIS, either arcgis.com or your own portal. Add an item from your computer and then you choose the file. So navigate to your media folder and select the CSV file. The file will become an item, a CSV item, which you can see here. Now you will want to share it accordingly. And back in Survey123 Connect, you are going to go to the linked content tab here at the bottom. As you know from the link content, you can link to online, offline maps, but also CSV files. So you're going to select your own CSV item and link it. Once a list has been linked in this way, the application will always keep it up to date in the mobile device. You can update your CSV item using notebooks or manually. The mobile app will do the rest. Lists are very important, and Survey gives you quite a bit of flexibility to control the way they look and behave. Let's have a look. When working with the small lists, I like to show all choices to the user. That way, they are only one tap away from making a selection. You can arrange your lists vertically and horizontally. When lists are longer, I rather go with the drop-down style. Drop-down styles can also be configured with filtering or autocomplete. As I type in, the list of choices at the bottom gets filtered, right? So you can make selections more easily. We also support the Likert style, which is so common and useful in social studies. Survey123 supports the notion of select multiple checklists, where you can select more than one element from a list. And again, you can arrange them vertically, horizontally, or in drop-downs as you see fit. The table list allows you to group multiple questions into a grid to make the survey more compact. If you want to get creative, you can also use images, visual lists, like in this case, where I can visually interact with an image to make a selection. So far, nothing new. This has been supported for quite a while. Okay, sorry for the wait. So here is what is new. The compact end appearance. It arranges choices in columns similarly to the horizontal appearance, but in this case, you can set the exact number of columns that should be used. For example, compact 4, 4 columns, compact 3, 3 columns. By the XLS form spec, the maximum number of columns is 10. Although in the case of the field app, you can go with as many as you like. For the web app, we stop at 10. Hopefully you don't have to use so many. The randomize equal true is a new parameter that you can add to randomize the order of choices in a list. This is useful when you want to prevent the order of choices to bias responses, because very often people tend to pick choices at the top or at the very end of the list. So in these cases where you don't want this to happen, you can randomize them. You can apply randomize equal true to any type of list that you want. Finally, we are also introducing this new type of question, is the rank question. It allows end users to sort items in a list in order of preference. So based on the position in the list, the choices will get a score, which you can then kind of look at and analyze. Here is the syntax. It's a new type of question called rank. You pass in the name of the list that you want users to sort, and you can optionally use the randomize equal true parameter as well. Typically, in this type of experience where you let users sort a list of items, you don't want to present many items, like 6 or 7 items is probably kind of the top number of items that you may want to present to users. In this section, I'm going to talk about the hidden appearance and a new column called Esri body visible. This is an important section because it talks about techniques that you can use to calculate values within your form without showing them to the user, and how to better control the visibility of questions, pages, and groups in your smart forms. So the traditional way to hide a question is through hidden and calculate question types. For example, here we have a geotrace question, so the user of the form can draw, say, the segment or portion of a pipeline that has been inspected. And we use a hidden question. We never show this to the user. We use a hidden question to calculate the cost at $30.50 per meter. I could also use a calculate question for this. Hidden and calculate are actually quite close. Both hidden and calculates are mapped by default to text fields, so it's always useful, like in this case when I'm calculating a number, to use the bind Esri field type and set it to the appropriate field type. So again, nothing new so far. We have had hidden and calculate questions for a while. Now, what is new is that now you can also use the hidden appearance. You can see here that this allows us to hide a question while preserving its type. So in this case, I'm no longer using the field type column. I'm just saying, hey, this is a decimal question, and it's going to be hidden. So I will still calculate it, not show it to the user. This is a kind of a more interesting use case where I'm hiding a geopoint, right? So in this case, you could never hide a geopoint question, because if you were to use a calculate or a hidden question type, then you are no longer talking about a geopoint type, right? You just change it to hidden. But in this case, you can say, okay, here's a geopoint question, and it's going to be hidden. You can now calculate it. You can use the value from the geopoint to create a constraint somewhere else, etc. With the 3.12 update, you can also now add the body Esri visible column. It behaves similarly to the relevant column in that if the expression you write in there is true, then that question is going to pop. And if it is false, the question will be hidden. So you can dynamically show and hide content in your form. So both relevant and Esri visible apply to questions, groups, pages, even repeats. Now the difference is that while the relevant column will null all values when the function or expression is false, in the case of the Esri visible, it doesn't. So it preserves any values that the user may have typed. So for example, you start typing, an address in this case, and the geopoint question will disappear, right? Because if the length of the string in the address question is equal to 0, then this expression is true, then the geopoint will pop. Well, if this were the relevant statement, the moment you start typing an address, the geopoint is cleared. In this case, no, because it's the body Esri visible, right? The question will be hidden, but the value, whatever value the user set to the question, will be preserved. At this moment, this column is only supported in the field app. We are looking at bringing this functionality also into the web application in a future release. Okay, now let's talk about enhancements for attachments in this release. The file question type has been supported in the web app for a while. You can use it to let users upload documents like zip files, PDF, PowerPoints, along with your survey. It's now also supported in the Field app. It works well in Windows, Mac, including iOS and Android devices as well. This one is big, the multi-line appearance. It allows end users to upload multiple images or multiple documents with a single question in your form. This is what we used to do in the past. We would either add multiple image questions or we would add a repeat with an image inside. We shouldn't be doing this. We should actually stop doing it. Do not add a repeat containing just an image question. It will make access to your photos harder. Use the multi-line appearance instead. This is not to say that you shouldn't use an image question within a repeat. I want to be clear. This is a good example where it actually makes sense. In this case, not only you want to capture the photo, but you want to type in a description for every photo, and you want to also calculate the lat and lon of the photo. You want to have these attributes for every photo, so the multi-line appearance will not work. In this case, you want to use a repeat. By the way, using the count selected function, which you might be aware of already, if you apply this function to an image question or a file question, then it returns the number of attachments in that question. So this allows you to, basically count the number of photos that someone has uploaded with, say, a damage assessment, for example. This one is interesting too, the controlling the photo capture method. So as you can see in the body Esri style column, you can now specify the method for an image question. And the method can be camera or browse or map or all of the above. So let's have a look at what this really means. If you set the method equal to camera, then people will be forced to use the camera on the device to take a new photo. If you use the method browse, they will be able to browse for existing photos in their gallery in the device. And if you go with camera, browse, then you allow both methods, which is actually the default. If you leave the method completely empty, this is what will happen. This gives you more flexibility to control how you want people to submit photos, either new photos or photos from your device. I am sure you all know that from within Connect, you can control the image size that gets submitted to ArcGIS. You go into Options, set the image size. Okay, no news. Now, in this release, you can also use the max pixels parameter to assign the maximum size of an image at the question level. So this kind of overrides the image reduction policy set for the survey in Survey123 Connect. It gives you more granular control. And of course, it applies to the field application as well as the web application. So if you are concerned about the size of your photos, but you want granularity on each question, max pixels is your friend. If you ever played with multilingual surveys, you may have noticed that there were like 4 or 5 elements in a survey that could not be translated. That goes into an end with this release. Here are the basic elements that could not be translated before. The title, unfortunately, the label shown in the submit button, as well as the footer. As you can see here now, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. You can see that you can, in your XLS form, add note questions with these specific names. You already know that typically when you add a note type of question, you don't want to set a name, a value in the name column. Now, in this case, this is exceptional. In this case, you actually want to do that. So these are very specific names that you can give to your notes. So we know that this text has to go into the title, the footer, or the label of the submit button. As you can see here, you can add labels for all the languages that you want to support. One additional trick or fact here is that we actually have a specific note for the thank you screen. This is the screen that shows in the web application right after you submit a survey. So some people have been asking, hey, can I translate the thank you screen? It's like, yes, you can. You can see it right here. But even better, you can now add dynamic content from your form into the thank you screen. And this is basically how you do it. Again, we use the note type of question with this specific name, generated note prompt submitted. And this is telling us, oh, that's the thank you note. And now the label, look at this, we're using dynamic labels, right? So you can insert a variable within the label, and that's what we actually are going to show. Some of you might be already familiar with the notion of using custom JavaScript functions within your XLS form. This is a very interesting and powerful technique. It helps you complement the XLS form syntax with JavaScript syntax. As you can see in this sample, we are using the pull data function to invoke a JavaScript function. The JavaScript function file is specified first, then the name of the function, and then you can pass as many parameters separated by commas as your function needs. There are many good use cases for this. You can evaluate complex expressions like parsing, mathematical models. It's much easier to model those in JavaScript than it is in XLS forms. You can also use JavaScript to connect to external services. You can make HTTP calls to external services. For example, you can query a feature service spatially or just with the attributes to feed calculations or constraints within your form. While the concept is not new, the way you author these JavaScript functions is. Let's have a look at it. So you are looking now at a form that is used to delineate enumeration areas in a population and housing census effort. Within an enumeration area, we need to map all the buildings that we find. You can see here I have been mapping some buildings already. JavaScript functions in this form make sure that every time I add a new building, a new census mapping number is created for me, a number that is unique from any other building in the repeat. In fact, if I type in an invalid number in there, not an invalid number, but really a number that has been already been used, my JavaScript function is going to prevent me from doing that. And also when I add a new building, then the census mapping number for this new building will be created automatically for me, in this case, number 4. So what is new here is that authoring these JavaScript functions is embedded within Survey123 Connect. At the bottom, you can see the scripts tab. I'm going to click on it, and you can see the code of my isUnique function and the return unique ID function. How do you create your own? Well, on the side, you have a new script file button, which you can use. I'm going to create a new JavaScript file called demo. And inside it, you can add your own functions in here. So in this case, I'm going to add here a function to add a couple of numbers. I go with something like that. And now I'm going to select my function to give it a go. So I'm going to enter 2 and 2, and the output is 22. So that means I need to actually use the number function in here. So you can see that you can try your own functions within Connect, give them a go. Okay, this works as I want. And now look at this. You can even copy to the clipboard the XLS form function you need to use to invoke your function from within the XLS form. Obviously, you will want to replace the variables in here, but it's like, wow, it's right here. Copy to clipboard and go into the XLS file. Obviously, as you add your functions to your survey, they get added in the scripts folder. So if you are familiar already with JavaScript functions, you knew you had to manually create this folder, add the JavaScript file. Now we do that for you. And if you like to actually write your code in an external editor, you can do it too. Note that from here you can launch an external editor. In my case, I have Visual Studio Code, and then you can work on your functions, save them, and bring them over into Connect like that. Okay, so here we have a few and last comments on the release, a few things you should know. Number one, we have implemented the position and index repeat XLS form functions. They are very handy when you are working with repeats, and they work both, of course, in the Field app and the web app. If you use Survey123 Connect on Windows, you might be tired of uninstalling Connect before you can install the latest version. If that's the case, my recommendation is that you install Connect from the Microsoft Store. If you still want to use the executable for installing, as of 3.12, we will support installation over the top. So when 3.13 ships, you will be able to install it more easily. This is also a nice enhancement. Thank you, Daniel, for your GeoNet idea. It's about allowing you to format numbers according to your locale in Survey123 reports. So this is done as well. The new gallery of templates in Designer is a nice addition as well. We will be complementing the existing templates with more entries in the next few weeks and months. And finally, the Survey123 website includes a change owner option. And this one is nice because, as you know, forms often have other elements related, such as feature services and views, etc. With this little option, you will be able to transfer ownership much more easily and consistently. You can see that you can even define the target folder for the survey in the next owner's content. The best way to understand the roadmap of Survey123 is to be present and participate in the early adopter community. However, today I want to very briefly highlight some of the development projects that we have on the works at the moment. The first one is about the address question. And the thing with this is that for many people, addresses and not maps represent the easiest and most accurate way to define a location. So the address question will let you effectively capture a location without the use of a map by simply entering an address in a text question, as you can see in the animation. What is nice about this question is that you can use hidden questions to not only get the address and the location, but also the city, the zip code, and many other things. Here is the representation in XLS form. You can see that this is simply a geopoint question with a geocode appearance. Optionally, you can define the locator you want to use. And then you can use hidden questions. You can see that we have a couple of 3 questions here with the hidden appearance. And then using pool data, you can extract the result of the geocoding process. In this case, we are extracting the geocoding score, the standardized address, and also the original address that the user entered. We are also working on dynamic lists. Dynamic lists basically allow you to populate choices from a query. You could either query a local choice list or query a feature layer. The dynamic list syntax in XLS form uses the search appearance, and there are details in the early adopter community. We are also now releasing the documentation for building your own Survey123 Field app add-ins. You can find it in the early adopter program. With Survey123 add-ins, you can build custom user experiences to capture data and connect to external sensors. We are also working on incorporating location tracking capabilities within Survey123 to help you monitor the location of Survey123 users in real time, but also to understand where Survey123 work has been conducted. So the intent is here to use the standard location tracking layers of your organization and follow the same licensing model. Other items on the works for 2021 include an enhancement in Survey123 Web Designer to bring hidden questions, calculations, and define more complex conditional visibility rules. The ability to execute custom JavaScript functions in public surveys. Enabling attachments in the Survey123 Field app inbox. I know this is a big one. And a new widget, a smart camera, that will help you leverage machine learning within the Survey123 camera. So with that, I want you to please provide your feedback for this session. I hope this session was useful. And also, we will wait for you at the showcase. The team will join the showcase to support your questions. You are more than welcome as well to join the Survey123 Q&A session. Thank you.
Thanks, Ishmael. Now we have the live QA session. I'm Barbara Webster, the moderator today and a product engineer on the Survey123 team. We have quite a few questions coming in, and if we aren't able to get to all the questions, we can also ask them at the Ask Our Experts section of the Dev Summit, where there will be Survey123 team members available to take your questions in the Field Apps channel. So the first question is from Cray, and it's, when you update a linked CSV, will the app notify you of a change like when the survey itself is updated?
Yes, it will. So just as a reminder, starting with 3.12, you can, in Survey123 Connect, link your survey with a CSV and then use the CSV to populate a list. If you somehow change the CSV item, maybe uploading a new file with Python or just manually, the Survey123 app will notify, well, actually, it will not notify the user, but you will see a message saying updating list. This happens when you open the survey. So we don't check all the time. We only check when you open the survey and you get in the survey details page. At that moment, we check, and you will see, if you are connected, you will see the message saying, I'm downloading the updated CSV file. Yeah. Also, I want to, just as a reminder, the support for linked CSV files is in 3.12 in the Field app. It's all good, but in the web is coming in the 3.13 release, which we will release later this year for the UC.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is, will view and/or edit attachments from the inbox be available?
Yes, of course. That's I was expecting this one. This is our #1 priority at the moment in terms of new features. We are working on this. We expect to have a beta around June, July, so you can use the inbox to view, update, or delete existing attachments. At the moment, when features get downloaded into the inbox, all the data comes in except the attachments. So this is something that we want to resolve. As an author, you will always have a chance to say, do you want to upload or bring the attachments or not? Because it can get heavy otherwise. But yeah, we will be adding these. I think before the end of the year, we will have this feature in general release, but to start your testing, June, July.
Okay, thank you. And is there any plan to have feature reports integrated with Microsoft Power Automate?
Yeah, yes, of course, there are plans, but you see on this one, we are very limited with what we can do with Microsoft Automate. As you know, you can automate reports in Integromat because the framework has everything needed for us to do it. But on Microsoft Automate, we have been meeting with Microsoft, it's really, really hard. So we have not been able to really productize something that would be easy to use. Having said this, I actually have seen people building automate workflows that actually automate the reports. They use the REST API of reports and kind of loops within automate to do all the calls and download the file, etc. So it is technically possible, but it's extremely challenging. We will continue working with Microsoft on this to see if we can deliver something easy for you to do. Otherwise, I think we may actually publish a guide for very advanced Microsoft Automate users, so you can hack your way and automate this process with the existing Microsoft Automate tools.
Okay, next question. How can I display attachments in a survey while in edit mode? The edit mode is extremely powerful for updating feature layers. However, showing the attachment is inconsistent.
Yes, no, 100% agreed. As I described earlier, support for images in the inbox coming beta, July, June, general release before the end of the year. So stay tuned for news on that. It's not possible at the moment. We need to work on that.
Is there any ability to share a survey publicly while not allowing public access to the service it commits to?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. I mean, you have to expose the feature layer in a public survey for the survey to add data. But that doesn't mean that you need to enable queries or even updates. So from a practical perspective, you can create a public survey where the feature layer is add only. Nobody can look at the data. They can only push data into the layer. This is done best with feature layer views. And we actually have in Esri community a blog that describes how to secure your public surveys. There is one blog for Connect users and one blog for designer users. So again, go to the Esri community and look in the blog for securing public surveys, and you will find the blog. Maybe Barbara, we can add a link as well in the question here in the system.
Okay, next question is there a capability to link Survey123 to external data collection apps?
Yeah, to some extent, yeah, there is. In Survey123, you can create a note type of questions. And then in the note, you can insert HTML syntax and create a link. So effectively, from the Survey123 form, you can create an HTML link that launches quick capture, for example. And you can even pass parameters because dynamically you can build the link with variables in your XLS form expressions. So that's how you can, launch other apps from Survey123.
Okay. And the next question is, can you allow users to choose a name for their attachments added in the survey?
Yes and no. You can, when you take a photo from Survey123, you can, if you tap in the photo, you will preview it. At the bottom, there is an option where you can change the name. So we always give it a unique name using a global ID, a GUID, but you can go and type in whatever you want. You can call your image bananas.jpg. That's fine. So yes to that. No to calculations. We can't yet use a calculation in the form to automatically name an attachment based on other questions in the form. This is a known limitation, but manually you can change the name of the files.
So can I use the map question to calculate other fields, such as street address?
Yeah, yes, no, definitely. We do have a blog post called Reverse Geocoding with Survey123, also in Esri community. It describes how you can use the pool data function to extract an address from the geopoint question. You can also extract the X, the Y, the Z, the horizontal accuracy. There is another blog called Pulling Data from Geopoint Questions. It describes how you can, the geopoint object in Survey123 actually includes more than the X, Y, and Z. So that article describes everything you can extract to calculate other hidden or visible questions in your form. Yeah, we'll need to add the link there, Barbara, in the question as well.
Okay, and are surveys published with older Connect versions designed to work with new versions of Survey123, or do we need to upgrade them to match the Survey123 version?
Well, I mean, the question varies really. Like, I would say, if you are working on the web, when you publish a survey and you use the web browser to look at that survey, we use version locking. This means that your survey is locked at the version used when you publish the survey. So we do this on purpose, by design. So you publish the survey, and you know that with new releases, we don't touch it. So if you want your survey to be upgraded, you need to publish it again. Now, at that moment, you need to upgrade Connect, right, to the latest version, and then it becomes 3.12 or whatever. If you are using the field app, I mean, technically, we do our best not to break anything. So when you install the new app, even though your survey might be published with version 2.5, it should continue to work. But, well, I mean, I think it's good practice to upgrade your surveys whenever you can. We know the pace of new releases is high, but you shouldn't keep your, I was looking before at the question, I think your version of the survey was 2.5. Well, it's time to upgrade. We are on 3.12 already. So yeah, try, as long as you can, try to keep your surveys up to date. But in principle, we try not to break already published surveys, both in the field app and the web app.
Okay, and what is the best manner of optimized performance when I work with lists of more than 10,000 options?
Well, for long lists, there are different strategies, and they change whether you are working against the field app or the web app. In the field app and the web app, actually, in either case, when you are working with long lists, number one, appearance, more important than anything else. Never use the default appearance, because in the default appearance, we render all the choices one after another. If you have 10,000, do the math, how much time it's going to render. So number one tip, use either the minimal appearance, drop-down list, or the autocomplete appearance. That's number one. But you can further optimize by selecting the right type of question. Select one is not really built to support questions with more than a few hundred choices. If you have a few hundred choices or thousands or millions of choices, you should be using, in the field app, you should be using select one from file or select multiple from file. Both of them were described in the session today. These are way more effective because the choices are stored in a more efficient way, and we can build indexes much more quickly on those, as compared to a simple select one. If you are working on the web, don't bother with select one from file, because it makes no sense on the web to download a file with 1 million records. Right? On the web, the best way to handle very long lists is to use dynamic lists. In other words, query a feature layer to dynamically populate the list. This is coming in 3.13 in June. So right now on the web, we can handle a few hundred, a few low thousand choices in a list. But as soon as we ship 3.13 later in the year with queries, there will be no limit to the number of questions you can handle in the web app. I want to emphasize in the field app, we can handle them together. There is a blog post also I recently wrote on working with millions of choices in a list. So I will copy the link in the question so you can have it. And by the way, I know we are flying through these questions and responses. In the Ask the Experts section in the Dev Summit, you can always go to the Field Apps team and ask for Survey123 support in case you want to connect on one-on-one with people from the team, so we can deep dive into these answers in more detail. Back to you, Barbara.
All right, so the next question is, are there any plans for stacked repeats, i.e. an Excel table type of format or view? Or are there workarounds that would let folks see all the repeated entries?
Yeah, not at the moment. The repeat navigation is what it is at the moment. You can go to the left or to the right, kind of advanced, but we cannot display rows, like stacked rows, like a table with all the information in your repeat at the moment. You can sort of hack things, concatenating, like you can create a node question and use a concat function in an expression to get basically all the data from your repeat and display it in a node. So it's kind of a hack. In simple cases, it actually does well. But yeah, we don't have plans. It's actually a tougher problem than it looks. But if you want to, spend some time with us, people in the team, describing your specific business use case, we would love to do that.
Okay, the next question is, will support for JavaScript and publicly shared web surveys be added?
Yes. Yeah, we know this has been hot lately. So just for context, in a survey in Connect, you can write XLS form expressions for your calculations and constraints. You can also write custom JavaScript functions. For security reasons, we did not initially allow the execution of these JavaScript functions in public surveys. But we are working on ways to make this secure. And in our next update in 3.13, you should be able to run them. So the way this is going to work is as follows. The administrator of the ArcGIS organization will need to first opt in to an option that says, enable execution of JavaScript functions in public surveys. And once that option is on, you are good, right? So if the admin gives you permission, we go for it. We will do this for both the web and the field app, coming soon again.
Okay, is there any product plan to include a native Survey123 connector for ArcGIS Enterprise within Power Automate without having to create a custom connector?
I wish we could, but it's not possible. In Integromat, if you go to the advanced connection properties, you can say, this is my portal, work against my portal. With Microsoft Automate, this is technically not possible. It's like a big no from Microsoft. So there is just no other way. In Microsoft, you have to create a custom connector. We have recently released documentation that describes how you can do this. It's not something, it's not like you can do it visually. It takes a little bit of time, but quite frankly, if you follow the KB article from Esri Tech Support, it may take you, 2-3 hours and you can do it. It's a premium feature in Automate, so you need to have the proper licenses. So it's not super easy, but it's totally doable. If you really need to do it, you only have to do it once, right? Once you have the connector built, everyone in the organization can reuse it. So yeah, I encourage you to go through the article and create your own connector against your own portal. It's the only way. It's not like we have an option there.
Okay, next question is, how does the ranking data look in the field? How would we parse that out when trying to show the ranking within a dashboard?
That's an excellent question. The ranking question, the output, the value of a ranking question is a comma-separated list of values. It looks exactly like a select multiple. So using calculations, you can extract what is the most voted value, what is the second, what is the third choice. So you can extract these values into hidden questions. This is described well, again, in a blog post. We actually have like a simple, like a snippet that describes the XLS form function you can use. So it's doable. You can extract a comma-separated list. As you can imagine, the raw output cannot be displayed in a dashboard, right? You need to process, as I described, with XLS form calculations, the output of the question and kind of copy the outputs into separate hidden questions before ArcGIS dashboard can display it. In the Survey123 website, though, we have all the logic built in to display the ranking from the raw values. You can even use custom scoring. So you can say, well, if people put this choice in the 11th position, give it a score of 0. So when I see my scoring chart, it's not even accounted for. So yeah, that's out of the box in the Survey123 website, if you want to have a look.
Okay, next question is, if you change the domains or choices for a field, will republishing the survey update the domain and choices
Yeah.
in AGOL.
Right. So you have a list, and you noticed when I publish my survey for the first time, we create the corresponding domain for a select one, unless you have a choice filter, in which case we don't create a domain. So the question is, if I add new choices in my XLS form, will you update the domain in the geodatabase? The answer right now is no, but this is something that we know many of you would like to do. So it's in our plan to do, and I cannot tell you, on this release, but I think there are chances we could actually do this potentially in a connect update within this year. So it's in our roadmap. This is one of these things in ideas, in ArcGIS ideas that you really want to vote. But yeah, I think it's doable. It's technically doable, and we just need to find some time to actually promote it into the list and do it.
All right. The next question is there a way to automatically filter a public survey for offensive words?
Yes, it is possible, but it's not everything within the realm of ArcGIS technology. Okay, so I have seen people do this already. So you can use, here the ideal thing is to use a webhook. So as data gets sent from the user, your webhook can get this response, filter out offensive content, and flag that record as offensive, or simply remove the data from that response. This is possible with Automate, this is possible with Integromat. There are, in fact, third-party web services that will take text and find offensive content. Even images. When people submit photos, you can upload them to Google Cloud, and Google Cloud will tell you, is there offensive content in this photo? So these web services are external to Esri, so somehow you need to be able to automate a process by which incoming data comes in, you pass through the web service, and you tag your data accordingly. Alternatively, using Python, you can also do this type of things. It takes a little bit of work. It's not like a checkbox, but it's totally doable. And again, on a one-on-one discussion through the Developer Summit, we can probably discuss more the details with you, so help you out. Generally speaking, I would say that if you are concerned about offensive content, you should always use default values in a hidden question, for example, to indicate that the data that has been submitted has not been validated. That way, unless the data is actively promoted or checked as sane, it won't show up in web maps. You can use filters to say, unless this has been checked, don't show me this record. Right? So the data is seen, but nobody can see it because your layer view is using a filter to hide it. That would be best practice.
Okay, and the next question is, are nested loops currently supported in ArcGIS Survey123, or will they be soon?
Nested loops, if by nested loops you mean nested repeats, yes, you can have a repeat, in other words, a related record, and then another one, and another one, and another one. There is no limit to the number of nested repeats that you can have. For example, I'm doing a campground survey in Joshua Tree, right? So I say one repeat, I have one campground, and then I have campsites, one repeat. What's the equipment within this campsite? That will be yet another repeat, right? A repeat within the repeat. So one campground can have many campsites. Every campsite can have many assets, equipment. In Survey123 Connect, if you go to the create new from sample, there's like samples, look for nested repeat and you will find it.
Okay, and the next question is, when should I use Esri body visible versus the relevant column?
Okay, good question. This is fairly new. This is new in 3.12. We added a new column in XLS form called Esri body visible or body Esri visible. So The relevant column allows you to specify when a question should be relevant or not, which a lot of people think is like, oh, it's like saying is visible or not. Well, not exactly. Relevant means is visible to the user, and also data in that question will be sent to the server. When a question is not relevant, not only we hide it, we also null the value of the question. So when the user hits submit, even if you type something, if the question is not relevant, we will send null values. With the visible column, we support exactly the same level of expression, but it just controls the visibility of the question. So it shows or hides. But the thing with visible is that if the user ever typed a value in there, we will send it. If you have a calculation, even if the question is not visible, that value will be sent, right? Different to relevant. Relevant statements, if it is false, calculations, null. Default values, null. User entered values, null. Very, very different.
Okay, and the next question is, can custom JavaScript functions work offline?
Yes. The problem is that often JavaScript functions, and this is your choice, use web services. If a JavaScript function uses a web service, you have to be connected for the function to properly execute. But there are a gazillion different types of JavaScript functions you can write that don't use web services, and they work offline. Think about JavaScript functions that work to extract data from repeats, to do complex calculations, to parse data from barcode scanners. All of that will work offline. Again, if you don't make online calls, the function works even when disconnected.
Okay, and the next question is, can I use a calculation to calculate the number of attachments in a record?
Yes, actually, I think we described this, right, in the session. Use the count selected function. So you have your image question, and then enable multiple attachments with the multi-line appearance on the image question. And then you can have later on another question with a calculation and say count selected on your image question, and that counts the number of attachments on that record. That's simple. Count selected.
And when should I use max pixels versus using the image size setting in Connect?
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, I can see that confusion there. So in Survey123 Connect, there is an option where you can control what is the maximum size of the images that can be submitted from a form. Okay. So that's helpful if you want to keep those photos a little bit, consistent in the database. That is a form-wide setting. It applies to every question in your form, like image questions, signatures, annotated images, all of that. The max pixels property is defined at the question level. So if you want to have granularity within your form and say, look, this question, I want full resolution images. On this question, I want a small image. That's what max pixels is for. It gives you extra granularity that you don't get in Connect, because in Connect is a survey-wide setting as opposed to a question-wide setting.
Okay, and I think we just have time for one more question. The last question is, when will 3.13 release?
If I can get this right, we are shipping, let's say May. But you see, with the release dates, we do our best, but things can move. Okay, so let's go with May for now, but we'll see. We look a lot at your feedback in the early adopter community. Often we push back the release because we see things in the early adopter community that we don't like. Either comments that are warning about you are not ready, but also we looked at when we don't get that feedback, that delays the release. So really the best way to accelerate development is to participate with the team, early adopter community, test the data, provide feedback, test out all surveys. We want to make sure the next release is not breaking your current work. There is nothing better, nothing gives us more confidence, and nothing accelerates development more than your engagement in the early adopter community. So I want, if you are in a hurry for the next release, I encourage you to be in contact with the team and participate in early adopter, not only testing new features, but also testing your old surveys and saying, hey, you know what, this is working good with the next release. And then it actually helps.
Okay, and it looks like we are just about out of time. If you had any questions that we weren't able to get to today, again, you can ask them in the Field Apps channel and the Ask Our Experts section of the Dev Summit site, or you can ask questions in the Survey123 community within the Esri community site. So thank you for coming today, and we hope to see you on the Field Apps channel chat.